Hello and welcome to the 2022 celebration of Kentucky Writers' Day. I'm Chris Cathers, Executive Director of the Kentucky Arts Council. The past 2 years, we've celebrated Kentucky Writers' Day as a virtual event. And although that presented us some opportunities for writers to join us from where they live, we missed the in-person fellowship. I think you'll agree that it's always nice to have so many Kentucky poets laureate under one roof. And we'll be hearing from them later in this celebration, including remarks from Crystal Wilkinson. As she reflects on her first year of tenure as Kentucky Poet Laureate, we're happy to welcome all of you who have joined us here in the Capitol Rotunda, in this beautiful space, as well as the audience viewing the program on Facebook Live. Now I'd like to introduce Mike Berry, Secretary of Kentucky's Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Chris, for that introduction and for your leadership over the last 4 years. We were talking about that this morning. Chris and his team have worked diligently in leading our cabinet's efforts to support the arts. The Kentucky Arts Council staff and team, their commission, the entire operations commitment has helped navigate our state's roadmap in how we support artists during the economic recovery from the pandemic. It's because of their commitment, along with the leadership of Governor Beshear, that our cabinet was able to invest more than $1.7 million in federal funding to the arts industry. This critical funding supported more than 21 artists and 120 arts organizations in Kentucky as we all waited for the day where we could host events safely again. And that's one of the reasons that today is so special, because today represents the first time that Team Kentucky has hosted an in-person Writers' Day event. Today is the first time in 2 years that we've been able to come together and celebrate the significant impact that the arts and literature have on our culture. And what better place to be than in the People's House? A place that represents Kentucky's history and culture, and a place that you can just walk down the halls to see the artistic works of the Team Kentucky Gallery. Now, today we come together to celebrate Kentucky's Writers' Day, a day in which we honor Kentucky's strong literary traditions. It's also the day when we celebrate the anniversary of the birth of Robert Penn Warren, a Todd County native born April 24th, 1905, right here in the beautiful bluegrass of Kentucky. Robert Penn Warren placed Kentucky's arts industry in the spotlight when he was named the first U.S. Poet Laureate consultant for poetry in 1986. His prestigious recognition resulted in the Kentucky General Assembly establishing Kentucky Writers' Day in 1990 to further honor our strong literary tradition and roots. Now, 32 years later, we continue to celebrate the birth of this famous Kentuckian, and we honor all Kentucky writers who positively impact culture, tourism, and education across the Commonwealth. Today, we celebrate all of Kentucky writers who have followed in the footsteps of Robert Penn Warren. So here in Kentucky, we're blessed to have so many talented artists helping shape our children and grandchildren's future, as well as a compassionate leader in Governor Beshear, who has been committed to building a better Commonwealth for all of us to enjoy. The governor has been a true advocate for the tourism industry, and especially for the arts. The governor and First Lady Brittany Beshear understand the impact that the arts have on all of us here in Kentucky. And they have led our state's efforts to ensure that this administration has made sound economic investments in the recovery of the arts industry. So now it's my honor and my privilege to welcome the 63rd Governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Andy Beshear.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. How good does it feel to be back here in person celebrating this day again? Welcome to your capital. I want to thank everybody for being here, but I also want to thank you for what you do. As a Kentuckian, but also as a dad, I have seen the impact of the arts, not just on my life, but on my children, on fostering their creativity and their development, on its impact on their health, on what it adds to Will and Lila's life. I thought I could be appreciative as a person, but being appreciative as a father brings a whole new love of what each of you do. And I want to thank all our outstanding Poets Laureate for coming today. I do want to acknowledge one Poet Laureate who could not be here today, and that's Gurney Norman. Gurney is retiring from teaching later this year after an incredible 43-year career at the University of Kentucky. His contributions to Kentucky literature and the generations of students he's taught are legendary, and I know he has many friends here today. Let's please let Gurney and his family know how much Kentucky appreciates him and the legacy he's created. And right now, I am happy to welcome this amazing group of Poets Laureate who have established their own legacies as authors and teachers and artists. We'll hear about each of your individual accomplishments, and we'll hear from you here in just a minute. And hearing all that you've done just underscores the reality that Kentucky is incredibly blessed. We are incredibly blessed to be the home of so many writers of tremendous talent, skill, and diversity, and we have been for generations. Harriet Simpson Arno from Wayne and Pulaski counties, Jesse Stewart from Greenup County, Robert Penn Warren from Todd County. And I love that we're seeing great writers from Kentucky's history being rediscovered, like Effie Waller-Smith. She's maybe the original Appalachian poet. She grew up in Pike County in the late 1800s and has been highlighted by KET and the Pike County Historical Society and was inducted into the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame. Or Walter Tevis, who grew up in Madison County and once worked for what is now the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. Tevis, who died in 1984, was known to the previous generation after the popular adaptations of his novels, The Hustler, and its sequel, The Color of Money. Many of us just remember Tom Cruise in the second one, and of course Paul Newman in both. Thanks to the recent limited-run dramatization of his chess novel, The Queen's Gambit, his work is being recognized widely once again. Kentucky's tradition in writing and literature is every bit as deep and rich as our traditions in bourbon or basketball or even horse racing, which we're about to celebrate in a couple of weeks. But what I love is we don't just create incredible works, but Kentucky writers have something to say, and their voices resonate across the Commonwealth and beyond. But we only know that to be true, we know that to be our reality, because writers like these Kentuckians who have put in the work to make their voices heard. And when we talk about some of the successes we're excited about right now, economic development, exciting new jobs, it comes with tremendous work. And I know each and every one of all of your accomplishments do too. And we should not only enjoy the splendor of what you create, but respect the amount of time and effort and skill that went into it. I want to thank each of you for getting up early and staying up late to finish the draft, to work on revisions, to create so much that is so magical. And also thank you for being Kentucky writers, for being proud of where you're from, to bring an honor to this Commonwealth, for making people sometimes take a second look at us. I think that's a lot of what has pushed us to where we are today, with more possibilities and fewer impediments in front of us as a state than maybe we've ever seen in my lifetime. Thank you for making a point of embracing and infusing culture, language, people, and history of this Commonwealth into your work. Thank you for inclusion, for reaching out to everybody, and for reminding everyone that there's a place for each and every one of us in the arts community. Kentucky is stronger, richer. It's also more interesting and connected because of your work. The Commonwealth is proud to be your partner in this work and to support writers and other artists through the Al Smith Fellowship. What a great man. And through the overall work of the Kentucky Arts Council and the Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet. We need to support our artists, because artists not only enrich our lives and enhance our quality of life, they're important for our economy as well. And if I can, in a post-COVID economy, people are looking for a little bit more. With the ability to live anywhere, they're looking for a place that they can enjoy, that is rich in the arts and in tradition, that is interesting and accepting, and that is vibrant and creative. And I will tell you, we're seeing people move in droves, not just to our biggest cities, but all over Kentucky, because some of our smaller towns have some of the most vibrant art scenes out there, and our special communities drawing more and more talent of all types to Kentucky. According to the United Bureau of Economic Analysis and the National Endowment for the Arts, in 2020, the arts added $5.6 billion to Kentucky's economy. And that was during the pandemic. Salaries for Kentucky artists professionals totaled $2.8 billion, with more than 46,000 people employed by the arts. We rarely think of the arts in terms of jobs and economic development, but 46,000 people, $5.6 billion is an enormous contribution that keeps this state moving forward. Arts education is also crucial. That's why the Commonwealth sponsors programs like the Kentucky Arts Council Teaching Artist Directory, as well as creative writing and other art forms from the Kentucky School for the Arts, or the program that I was proud to graduate from in 1995, the Kentucky Governor's Scholars Program. We also support programs like the Poetry Out Loud Recitation Contest. This program helps students not just read poems, but it gives them a chance to bring them to life, to develop their own voice, to develop public speaking skills, and to develop, again, their own creativity and to bring something of themselves to other people's work. On March 1, the Kentucky Arts Council hosted the virtual state finals for the Poetry Out Loud National Recitation Contest in partnership with the NEA and the Poetry Foundation. Students from 12 Kentucky high schools competed. And guess what? Our Poetry Out Loud 2022 Kentucky State Champion is Lupita Diaz, who is here with us today. Come on up. Oh, they want to see you a lot more than they want to see me. So Lupita is a freshman. You're a freshman and you already won this?
Yeah.
Wow. At Beechwood High School at Fort Mitchell. She's also an honor roll student. Come on. Okay. She competes in forensics. And to show you exactly how well-rounded she is, she also runs cross-country and track. So I'm convinced this is one of the most talented people that I've ever met, and I'm highly, highly jealous. Lupita will compete in the virtual national semifinals on Sunday. So let's give her a big round of applause of encouragement ahead of time. So, before she has that Sunday competition, I'd like to award you with this medal for winning Kentucky's Poetry Out Loud Championship. Are you comfortable if I put this? Okay. Let's see. All right. Congratulations. And given the power of her voice, #1 in this area in Kentucky, I think we ought to hear from her.
Lupita Diaz. Spanglish by Tato Laviera. Pues estoy creando Spanglish, bicultural systems, scientific lexicographical, intertextual integrations. Two expressions, existentially wired, two dominant languages, continentally abrazándose en colloquial combat en las aceras del Soyo. Imperio Spanglish emerges, control, bandillaje sobre territorio bilingüe. Las novelas mexicanas, mixing with radio rock and roll, condiment and cocina lore. Immigrant, migrant, nasal mispronouncements. Paraja, chismeteos, social club. Hip hop, Prieto, street salsa. Corner soul and mixturando. Spanish pop, farandula. Standard English classroom with computer technicalities. Spanglish is literally perfect. Spanglish is ethnically snobbish. Spanglish es carojoli inteligencia. Which U.S. slang do you speak? Thank you.
Oh my goodness. How about one more? Yeah. Well, Lupita, I know that you will do Kentucky proud on this Sunday, and I don't know if you thought about it ahead of time, but you just performed in front of some of the most accomplished poets and artists in the history of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and I think you did a wonderful job. So. Speaking of Team Kentucky, I want to say a special thank you to former Kentucky Poet Laureate from 2013 to 14, Frank X. Walker, who you will hear from soon. He participated in our Team Kentucky Mask Up campaign near the start of the pandemic. When we were trying to encourage Kentuckians to wear a mask, you were here to help us spread the word. I'm grateful, but people are also alive because of it today. Thank you. And I've determined that if we ever have to do COVID pressers again, Lupita, will you come and help us out with that too? I'd appreciate that. Now it's time to kick off our Poet Laureate readings, and we will open with our current Poet Laureate. Now, I hear Crystal Wilkinson was a little skeptical that I was going to be here today to introduce her. Well, Crystal, here I am, and I wouldn't be anywhere else. That's because I'm a fan. I am a fan of your work, and I'm not alone. More and more people across the United States are discovering Crystal, and I got to tell you, the awards are flowing in. Like the 2022 NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Poetry, the 2021 O. Henry Prize, a 2020 USA Artist Fellowship, and a 2016 Ernest J. Gaines Prize for Literary Excellence. You did all those things, and you earned every single one of those awards. We are so proud of your work. She even earned the enthusiasm of publishers, eager to share her work with the world, like her next book, Praise Song for the Kitchen Ghost, a culinary memoir that's due out next year. You even got the governor to plug your next book today. But let me be clear, Crystal's ability as a writer is only part of the reason I chose her to be Kentucky's Poet Laureate. She is also a dedicated and passionate teacher. And maybe the best explanation of why Crystal is a great Poet Laureate, writer, and teacher and Kentuckian is the wisdom, the compassion, the humility in her official teaching statement provided to us by the UK English Department. She wrote, "I begin with the assumption that we are both writers, me no better than them, and that it's all about taking the work to the next level, a path that we are both on. And placing our feet on the path in the first place is probably just as important as the journey itself." Her writer's journey began in the community of Indian Creek in Casey County. And I am so glad it's led her here today. And I can tell you I've had to make a lot of decisions in the last 2.5 years. And I'd like to think that everybody agreed with all of them, but I know that's not true. But I know one decision that all of Kentucky knows is the right decision was naming our next speaker and Kentucky's Poet Laureate, Crystal Wilkinson.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Governor Beshear, and thank you to the Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet and the Kentucky Arts Council for continuing to emphasize the importance of literacy and the literary arts with this day devoted to arts and letters in Kentucky. I'm happy to be here today to celebrate Kentucky Writers' Day and very glad that we could mark this day this year right here in the Capitol Rotunda in person together, face to face. And a special thank you to my peers, friends, and mentors. It's special to be here with past poet laureates. I would not be standing here without each of you modeling how this should be done. I'm so proud to be a part of Kentucky's literary legacy. I want to begin by holding a moment of reverence for the loss of two of our most talented and iconic Kentucky writers, Ed Mcclanahan and Bell Hooks. Ed Mcclanahan was born in Brooksville, Kentucky, the county seat of Bracken County. He received a Wallace Stegner Fellowship at Stanford University in 1962 and remained at the university as the E.H. Jones Lecturer in Creative Writing until 1972. While at Stanford, he was nicknamed Captain Kentucky, a persona he assumed when he became a member of Ken Kesey's band of merry pranksters. He wore various costumes, including a cape, often an American flag, Air Force sunglasses, and gold cowboy boots. Ed and his contemporaries, Wendell Berry, James Baker Hall, Bobby Ann Mason, and Gurney Norman, were considered the Fab Five group of Kentucky writers, products of the creative writing program at the University of Kentucky. The title story of his book, A Congress of Wonders, was made into prize-winning short film in 1993. Ed was the subject of an hour-long documentary on KET in '94. His writing has appeared in numerous magazines, including Esquire, Rolling Stone, and Playboy, and he twice won Playboy's Best Nonfiction Award. So Ed was a master storyteller, one of the funniest people I've ever known. He taught English and creative writing at Oregon State, Stanford, University of Montana, UK, and Northern Kentucky University. His most recent book was Not Even Immortality Lasts Forever, Mostly True Stories, which was released in 2020. Bell Hooks was a mentor and a dear friend. Writer, teacher, cultural critic. She was born Gloria Jean Watkins in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. She was best known for her writings on race, feminism, and class. Her work explored the intersectionality of race, capitalism, gender, and what she described as their ability to produce and perpetuate systems of oppression and class domination. Bell published more than 40 books, including essays, poetry, and children's books. She published numerous scholarly articles, appeared in documentary films, and participated in public lectures all over the United States and all across the world. Her work addressed love, race, class, gender, art, history, sexuality, mass media, and feminism. A celebrated academic, Bell began her academic career at the University of Southern California. She also later taught at Stanford, Yale, the City College in New York, before coming home and teaching at Berea College, where she was Distinguished Appalachian Scholar in Residence. She founded the Bell Hooks Institute in 2014. Her pen name was borrowed from her maternal grandmother, Belle Blair Hooks. As a writer, Belle chose the pseudonym Bell Hooks in tribute to her mother and grandmother. There are so many Bell Hooks books out there in the world, but I would suggest everyone read Bone Black, which was her memoir, and All About Love, where she makes the argument that only love can heal social divisions and enable us to come together as a true community. And we certainly need more love in our communities. So please read Belle. And may Belle and Ed continue to rest in peace. I said I wasn't going to cry today, but I'm proud to have called both of them my friends. They'll certainly be missed, and we'll continue to keep them alive in their work. So, it continues to be my pleasure to serve the Commonwealth as a representative of arts and letters. I take this job very, very seriously and think it's important for our young people to know that you can be from Kentucky, any part of Kentucky, and be a successful writer. You can be from Kentucky, from the hood to the holler, and be a successful writer. My primary goal in my first year as Poet Laureate was to continue to build community across the state and to help increase awareness of the many voices that make up Kentucky's story and to hold them up for the rest of the country to see. I wanted to start a podcast that highlighted both established and emerging writers in the state, and I'm pleased to announce that at long last, that podcast, which is called Words for the People, launches today via Louisville Public Media. And so you can subscribe and listen by going to wordsforthepeople.org. Our first episode features former poet laureate Frank X. Walker and a wonderful poet from Richmond, Zakiya Holland, who now lives in Louisville. And our second episode will feature Georgia Lyon, who's also a former poet laureate and recent inductee into the Kentucky Hall of Fame, and a Berea and UK MFA program graduate, Shanita Jackson. So I'm very, very proud of that accomplishment. It was hard to get it off the ground during the pandemic and get the quality that we wanted, but we did it. And it sounds great, so please listen. And I want to thank the production team at LPM and a collaboration with, get this, one of the things that I'm all about is collaborations. We have collaborated with UK's agricultural department. You know, you would think, how would that go together? Writing and the ag department, but we did that. And the hard work of several volunteers, including UK graduate student Dan Collins. So in addition to the podcast, it's been my goal to be an active poet laureate, and I wasn't really sure what that would mean in the middle of a pandemic, but I've managed to be active and to work hard. I've had, by Sunday, I will have done more than 20 events just this month. Since last April, I have made more than 80 appearances as Kentucky's Poet Laureate, including collaborative events with the Poet Laureates of Alabama, Georgia, San Francisco, the Young National Student Poets in the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers, and most recently with the U.S. Poet Laureate Joy Harjo at an event sponsored by Kentucky Humanities, their 50th anniversary of Kentucky Humanities, on Saturday at Northern Kentucky University. Some of the highlights of my tenure have included being in communion with the elders. I'm not too far from being one myself, but it's been good to be in communion with people a little bit older through the Osher Institute and the senior citizens at the Carnegie Center for Literacy Learning, with high school juniors and seniors at the Kentucky Governor's School for the Arts. I've visited my alma mater, Eastern Kentucky University, twice this year, where a young woman cried because she was from the country like me, and she was black, and she had never seen herself represented in a book and didn't think she would ever see that. We cried together. I met a man in Danville at the Danville Arts Center who knew my grandfather and had never been to a literary reading before. He was a farmer, but he wanted to come out and hear me read from my book and to tell me that he thought my grandfather, who had a third grade education and who was a tobacco farmer, would be proud. I spent a long lunch with a group of young women of color in Hazard who, like me, were one of a handful of people of color in their high schools. So McKenna, Tori, Jamie, Alexis, Tyra, and Taylor, I think about you all the time. I hope you're watching this, and I hope that your spines are still straight and you are proud. I've taught writing workshops to students and made class visits to Berea, Pikeville, Casey County, Liberty, Lexington Catholic, and as far away as Vermont, and also visited students in Bryson City, North Carolina, Knoxville and Cooksville, Tennessee, and other places. I celebrated with librarians and students at Butler High School in Jefferson County when the students met their reading goals, many of them meeting those reading goals for the first time. Among my favorite events this year have involved speaking to what I call the guardians of the books, librarians and teachers who are working hard across the state to promote literacy in their communities. I visited libraries in Frankfort, Paducah, Woodford County, Jessamine County, and spoke to the Rural Library Summit and the Collaborative Center for Literacy Development, where there were librarians and literacy specialists, teachers from all over the state. And I could go on because there are so many wonderful visits to bookstores and libraries and centers in a lot of communities, both inside of Kentucky and outside, but I won't bore you with I won't name all 80 places. And of course, there's always more to do, but literacy and literature are alive and well, I'm happy to report, in Kentucky. And I'm very proud to have fostered some of that this year. I wanted to take a moment to highlight some Kentucky authors who have new books coming out, and I'm sure that I've missed some. You all have to email me and keep me informed of some more. Our own Frank X. Walker has a children's book coming out called A is for Appalachia, which is illustrated by Ron Davis. I think I know him a little bit. It's my husband. Lee Cole, who is from around Paducah, has taken the literary world by storm and has a new book out called Groundskeeping. Lisa Cross Smith's Half Blown Rose releases in May. Danny Quintos is the author of Two Brown Dots, winner of the A. Poland Jr. Prize, and that book was released this month. Silas House has a new book called Lark Ascending that comes out in September. I think there are new books by Erin, what's Erin's last name in Louisville? She went through the MFA program. Erin Keene, yes. Erin Keene has a new book coming out too. So fall is going to be great for Kentucky writers and for Kentucky readers. I want to amplify all the voices of Kentucky writers. So if you are a Kentucky writer, let me know about your story, let me know about your book. Invite me to tell you about mine. I can be contacted at poetlaureateofkentucky@gmail.com, and I look forward to hearing from anybody, young or old, who wants to be a writer. So I've been thinking about what's next. This first year was sort of flooded with the pandemic. We did a lot of Zoom events, then sort of eked out a little bit with masks covered up, and then we've sort of taken our mask off. Now we don't know what the future will be. But I plan to continue to visit schools and libraries and centers. And one of my new goals, as if I didn't have enough on my plate, I have come across this idea that other poet laureates in the country are doing, and I want to begin a pilot program here of naming high school poet laureates to continue to increase the awareness of the importance of literacy and literary arts in our Commonwealth. So that's one of the main goals that I want to do this coming year. So Let me know, those of you all that are listening, if you have other ideas that you think our Poet Laureate should be doing. And I wanted to close with a special reading. When I was at Northern Kentucky University, someone re-gifted me with this. And this is a broadside that takes my poem, Terrain, and inserts it into James Steele's Heritage. So I thought it was appropriate to read this piece today. And it's a piece that was arranged by Frank X. Walker to honor Danny Miller, who was the department chair of the English department at Northern Kentucky University for many years, and Danny died in 2008. And so James Steele's poem Heritage came out in 1984. This particular edition of Terrain, my poem, was published in 2008, and it was reprinted in my book, Perfect Black, just last year. And so it's a really beautiful combination, and I just wanted to close by sharing this with you all. And thank you so much. I don't know, maybe I should let you know. You'll know the difference between me and James Steele. I shall not leave these prisoning hills, though they topple their barren heads to level earth, and the forest slides uprooted out of the sky. Though the waters of Troublesome, of Trace Fork, of Sand Lick rise in a single body to glean the valleys, to drown lush pennyroyal, to unravel rail fences, though the sunball breaks the ridges into dust and burns its strength into the blistered rock, I cannot leave, I cannot go away. The map of me can't be all hills and mountains, even though I've been geographically rural and country all my life. The twang in my voice has moved downhill to the flatland a time or two. My taste buds have exiled themselves from fried green tomatoes and rhubarb for goat's milk and pine nuts. Still, I'm haunted by home. I return to old ground time and again, a homing blackbird destined to always return. I am plain brown bag, oak and twig, mud pies and gut-wrenching gospel in the throats of old tobacco brown men. When my spine crooks even further toward my mother's, I will continue to crave the bulbous twang of wild shallots, the gamey familiarity of oxtails and kraut boiling in a cast iron pot. I toe dive in all the rivers seeking the whole of me, scout virtual African terrain trying to sift through ancestral memories, but still I'm called back home through hymns sung by stout black women in large hats and flowered dresses. I can't say the landscape of me is all honeysuckle and clover, 'cause there have always been mines in these lily-covered valleys. You have to risk the briar bush to reach the sweet dark fruit, and ain't no country woman all church and piney woods. There is pluck and cayenne pepper. There is juke joint gyrations in the young and bearing girth of this belly and these supple hips. All roads lead me back across the waters of blood and breast milk, from ocean to river, to the lake, to the creek, to branch and stream, back to the sweet rain, to the cold water in the glass I drink when I thirst to know where I belong. Being of these hills, being one with the fox stealing into the shadows, one with the newborn foal, the lumbering ox drawing green beech logs to meal, one with the destined feet of man climbing and descending, and one with death rising to bloom again. I cannot go. Being of these hills, I cannot pass beyond. Thank you all.
Thank you, Crystal. One of the things personally for me that the pandemic allowed for was to me to reconnect with my locally owned bookstore in Louisville, because they started offering a service where they would deliver a book to your door. And the first one that I ordered was Blackberries. So I really appreciate your being here today. I've got to tell our other poet laureates, I've begun reading through that, and Crystal's book arrived and it was an autographed copy. When I buy yours, I'm going to stalk you to get your signatures on them. So just that's just a warning here. We would like to invite our former poet laureates or poets laureate to share a reading with us. And our first reading will be by Richard Taylor, who served as Kentucky Poet Laureate from 1999 to 2000. He is the author of numerous collections of poetry, several books on Kentucky history, and 2 novels. His latest book, Bull's Hell, Poems of the Life of Cassius Marcellus Clay, will soon be published by Larkspur Press. Let's give a big Team Kentucky welcome to Richard Taylor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It's an honor to see the arts honored in Kentucky, especially among writers for whom I have so much respect. The poem I'm going to read has an epigraph to it from another fine professor at the University of Kentucky named Guy Davenport, who was, many of you I know knew, the late Guy Davenport, and who was a literateur of the first water. The statement was that the arts are the replacement of indifference by attention. And I think by attention he meant the ability to hold language, to hold ideas in the mind. And this little poem grew out of an incident. A photographer friend was visiting my home, and we walked out on the back porch, and there was a screen to which adhered, oddly enough, maple leaves, and they seemed to be suspended in space. And of course, I had walked past them day after day, not noticing. My photographer friend did, and this poem grew out of that experience. It's called Attention. As my photographer friend was leaving the other day, he stopped, his eye spotting leaves, maybe a dozen maple leaves, snared between earth and heaven in an invisible web whose filaments spanned a panel of the screened porch, as if gravity was arrested in mid-fall. For days I passed this curiosity with as little notice as breathing. Today, these threads and ragged yellow swatches held us both, released us from the rush of going at things, of swiping rouge across the world's blurred face. Fetching his camera from the car, he snapped several shots to honor the moment and preserve the mystery of suspension. Each click became a souvenir to prod us toward awakening, nudging us to focus and halt, at least temporarily, these frenzies of motion and habitual blindness by which we navigate the world. Poems, in their leafing, begin this way. Thank you.
Before we move on, I'd like to also mention former Poets Laureate Joe Servant, Kentucky Poet Laureate 2003 and 2004 of Bowling Green, and Maureen Moorhead, Kentucky Poet Laureate 2011 and 2012 of Louisville. Neither one could be here today, but are here in spirit, so I wanted to mention them. Sina Jeter Naslin served as Kentucky Poet Laureate from 2005 through 2006. She's the author of 9 works of fiction, including a critically acclaimed and national best-selling novels, Ahab's Wife, Abundance, a novel of Marie Antoinette, Four Spirits, and most recently, The Fountain of St. James Court, or Portrait of the Artist as an Old Woman. In 2022, she published an illustrated book for young children with Larkspur Press titled When Children Ruled the World, A Christmas Story. Her works have been translated into German, Spanish, Japanese, Korean, Hebrew, Polish, Danish, and Greek. Sina was the first director of creative writing at the University of Louisville, where she later became distinguished teaching professor and writer in residence, and she co-founded the Spalding University Low Residency Master of Fine Arts in Writing program, Kentucky's first MFA in writing of any kind. Her awards include the Harper Lee Distinguished Writers Award, the Hall Waters Award, the Southeastern Library Association Award in Fiction, and grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Kentucky Foundation for Women. In 2020, she was inducted into the Carnegie Center for Literacy and Learning's Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame. Sina was a founding and the continuing editor of the twice-yearly literary magazine, The Louisville Review. Currently, Sina is putting the finishing touches on a big historical novel featuring the childhood, marriage, partnerships, and early careers of Frederick and Anna Douglass, Abraham and Mary Lincoln, and Jefferson and Verena Davis, titled Before the War. Sina.
Thank you so much, all of you, for being here with us today. It's a wonderful space, a wonderful building to be in, here with wonderful company. And I especially thank our governor for gracing us with his marvelous, wonderful leadership and presence here today. Thank you so very much. I'm reading from this novel in progress. As was mentioned, it deals with 3 very major figures in our history who come from 3 very different backgrounds. I deal with the childhood and young adulthood of Abraham Lincoln, and also with Jefferson Davis, who at one time had a statue here, appropriately moved out, I think. But I wanted to understand Jefferson Davis, the leader of the Confederacy, in human ways, and especially how he and Abraham Lincoln and others grew to be the people they were. The abiding question for me is, how did these people become who they became? And I felt that was rooted, of course, in their early years. So I'm reading for a few minutes an excerpt from this novel that is in progress, titled Before the War. The war being, of course, the war we refer to as the Civil War. Jefferson Davis was born in a small town. This is not in my novel, I'm telling you the context here, in southern Mississippi. But his father, he was the last of 10 children, wanted him to be educated and sent him away to a school in Kentucky, a boys' school. Little Jefferson Davis didn't know he was going. People rode up. He was on his porch. His father said, pick up your bag, you're riding your pony to Kentucky. It was 500 miles that he went with another little boy who was coming to a school in Kentucky. This excerpt I'm reading takes place at the school, the boys' school, where Jefferson Davis was a student. He became 8 years old on that journey of 500 miles on horseback with people he didn't know. He was the youngest boy in the school, and as such he was placed with a special priest to look after him and take care of him. But he also very much wanted to be a member of the gang of the boys, and the boys decided that they would invade the room where the priest and little Jefferson Davis were staying and throw rotten vegetables on the priest. So he began to rebel and to get into trouble at an early age for getting some of the things that he owed to this old man who was so delighted to help a little boy from southern Mississippi. It was in the night that the boys threw rotten vegetables on the priest, whose room 8-year-old Jefferson Davis shared. Heavy footsteps of the other priests were heard in the hallway. The fathers surrounded Jeff's bed and demanded that he rise to be questioned. "Name the boys," Father Wilson ordered. But Jeff would only shake his head. He was afraid, but he knew he would never betray his comrades. Only when he glanced up and noticed that Father Cronus had withdrawn from the group, as though he wanted no part of Jeff's inquisition, did he feel a pang of remorse. The other priests bobbed about like ghosts in their night clothing, and the sight of them disheveled both diverted and intrigued him. Finally, Father Wilson said, "It is not for all of us to lose our sleep with this stubborn boy." He turned to Father Cronus and said solemnly to Jeff's roommate, "I direct you to take young Davis to the top floor, to the punishment room. You have had his special care. Now you must punish him as you see fit, for he has betrayed your kindness and trust." It was as though a nail entered Jeff's heart. Kindness and trust, yes, those were virtues one ought not betray. But did not his comrades also trust him? Now those firm old fingers took his wrist and led him from the room they had shared into the hall. At the end of the hallway was a narrow door, and beyond that, narrow stairs spiraling upward. "What is the punishment room?" Jeff asked. The old priest mumbled, "I have taken an oath of obedience to my superior." As soon as they opened the door of the punishment room on the top floor, Jeff saw there was a little bed there, not unlike the cot he slept on alongside the priest, but only this one had a hard board mattress and straps with buckles to secure buoys of varying sizes. Leather belts hung from nails driven into the walls. One whip had a braided handle, and from that hung several level thongs with knotted ends. When Jeff was commanded to lie face down on the punishment bed, he did so, mentally repeating to himself, I will not tell which boys those were." He turned his head to one side. To Jeff's amazement, he felt a drop, wetness, fall on his neck. Why, the old priest, the man was crying. He realized Father Cronus loved him and was greatly pained at the thought of striking him. Now the straps were buckled over his own body, and the priest was picking up a long brown strap, a sort of unfinished belt. Father Cronus raised the strap, then hesitated. Jeff almost sobbed for the sorrow in the old man's face. Father Cronus lowered his arm. He hesitated, cleared his throat, and spoke. "If you tell me what you know, which boys, no matter how little you know, I will let you off," he said. Then Jeff remembered that Father Wilson had given the old priest some discretion in the matter of punishment. "As you see fit," the director had said. Jeff hesitated, not wanting to lie. "I know one thing," Jeff said cautiously. "I know who blew out the light before the boys came in. That's all I know. If you name him, I will surely spare you and show you clemency," the priest offered again. "And you will not need to whip me if I name him. I will spare you, as I've promised. It was I who blew out the candle. You." And with that, the old priest dropped the leather strap, covered his face with both hands, turned away, and sobbed into his palms. "You, whom I have loved and cared for as if you were my own little boy." Then Jeff began to sob uncontrollably himself. The priest unbound him, and soon they sat together in the oak chair, he on the old man's frail lap. Jeff could hear the narrowness of those bones, could feel them under his own legs, as they both sobbed. After they had collected themselves, Father Cronus did not spare Jeff a long talk. Jeff felt truly and completely sorry he had rebelled against so benign an authority. But when he awoke the next morning, Jeff's first thought, not without pride, was that he had not betrayed his comrades. His wit had saved him from disgrace that could never have been redeemed had he told on his friends. At the thought of the old priest's agony, Jeff felt something in himself both harden and soften, like a pulse rushing forward, then retreating. He was only a boy, he told himself. He couldn't foresee how the old priest might feel. Jeff remembered the punishment room, its hard and narrow bed, and the array of whips against the wall. These were cruel items in a place that he had not known existed, sequestered at the top of the spiral stairs. Wasn't that discovery what mattered most? And he had not lied. He was like the boy George Washington in that. With his head still on the pillow, across the narrow room, the priest, waking up, smiled at Jeff, a strange sideways smile. "I just want to read you," he said, "one line from Wordsworth." The old priest sat up, reached for the volume, and turned a page. He read slowly and carefully, quote, "The child is father to the man." Thank you.
Frank X. Walker served as Kentucky Poet Laureate from 2013 through 2014. He is professor of English and African American and Africana Studies and director of the MFA in Creative Writing program at the University of Kentucky. He has published 11 collections of poetry. His first children's book, A is for Appalachia, debuts next year. Frank?
Thank you, Governor. I knew you would come, sir. Thank you for your leadership. Crystal, thank you for raising the bar so high and leading us in the literary community. Thank my fellow laureates and writers who contribute to such a vibrant writing community. If you didn't know anything about Kentucky literature and you just landed today and witnessed what's happening, you'd leave impressed, I'm sure. I'm going to read 2 poems about gardening, and that may seem like a stretch, but once we were sequestered in place, one of the silver linings at our house was we remembered we had grass in our backyard, and there was dirt underneath the grass, and we could put seeds in it, and things would grow out of the ground, and we could feed ourselves. So 2 poems about gardening. One metaphorically, but these are both connected to the pandemic. For some of us, it's been 2 years and a really long season of loss. This is called O Death. After a stir-tained winter with 3 family funerals, you stretched your neck and took a basketball icon and his daughter, a black man jogging, another and another, and then the gifted lyricist who brought us Grandma's Hands. You took a young queen in her sleep before the public lynching of a gentle giant. You have been more stubborn this year than the weeds we twist out of the ground and from between the bricks, returning for more and more before we can even say their names. While our cucumbers shriveled on the vine, you took Jackie Robinson, Thurgood Marshall, our James Brown, King T'Challa, all over again, all at the same time. When you came for the medium with a kind of blight he battled privately. It's not even flu season yet, like our sunflower raised from seed, threatened to reach her namesake. You hunger and seem to know no bounds. Studying the former tiny plants turned bushes, wild green things growing and stretching out in every conceivable direction, I watch every bright yellow bloom slow into an almost bursting fruit, full of summer showers and sunlight. Every one we pluck from the vine is replaced with another and another and another. Watching the large, noun yellow leaves fall away from the heads of cabbage, knitting themselves into almost spinning globes, into 2 rows of blue-green planets. I ask the air around me, what is the lesson here? What nugget of wisdom am I missing? Granted, all of this started as a box of dirt. We made holes and filled them with hope. They reached for stars and followed the sun every day. rested at night. Most of them fed us. A few shone bright like comets before crashing into the dirt to become one with the earth again. Oh, death, life can't be this painful, beautiful, and simple, can it? And I'll close with this poem that's also about gardening, literally, and a love poem. It's called Baptism by Dirt for Shanna. All believers know about the power of water, though not enough about the power of dirt. My mama used to walk barefooted in our vegetable garden, get down on her hands and knees and almost pray in the dirt. My wife and I and our 2-year-old built and planted 3 raised bed gardens. Watching her dip her fingers into the dirt to coddle what will feed us reminds me of Mama. And then, what is it that women know about nurturing a seed into a piece of fruit, about believing in the power of dirt and suns and water? I return from our labor with sore knees and back, fingernails and hands caked with dirt. She floats back into the house, cleaner, somehow less burdened, as if she spent the weekend burying all of her heavy things, as if she whispered to something sacred, and it whispered something back. Thank you. Thank you, Kristen.
Georgella Lyon served as Kentucky's Poet Laureate from 2015 through 2016. She is a poet, a writer, a teacher, a musician, a storyteller, and a social activist with Appalachian roots and a global reach. She has published 5 poetry collections, a novel, a memoir for adults, as well as numerous books for children and young adults. Last month, she was inducted into the Carnegie Center's Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame. And with it, that recognition for Kentucky writers whose work reflects the character and culture of the Commonwealth. Let's give a big Team Kentucky welcome to Georgella Lyon.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I appreciate all of you for coming. I especially want to take this opportunity to tell the governor in person how much we thank you for keeping us as safe and sane as you have done. My poem, Where I'm From, has been widely used as a writing model. And when I was Poet Laureate, we invited people all over the state to write Where I'm From poems and send them in. You can still read their words on the Arts Council website. Click on a county and the poems appear. But the Where I'm From pattern is one you can write from again and again. And sometimes your poems will be very personal. Other times they will speak to the collective. I want to read one of mine from 2018, written in the run-up to the midterm elections. And I must say that this poem, I'm not representing anybody but myself. So this has no approval. Where I'm From, 2018. I'm from the cries of families sundered at our southern border, while Lady Liberty faces a filthy sea. I'm from all white, able-bodied, well-off hetero men are created equal. And hey, Puerto Rico, have some paper towels. I'm from our predator-in-chief, who brags about grabbing pussy and mocks a woman who was sexually abused. I'm from countries we bombed or clear-cut or destabilized to get what we wanted. I'm from the 7 deadly sins confused with the American dream. I'm from the whole Pilgrim whitewash, our refusal to admit the land we stole, the Indians we slaughtered, the Africans we chained to build our wealth. I'm from their descendants gunned down in the street. I'm from children ripped from their parents' arms when the ship docked, at the auction block, in the field. I'm from their blood and bones feeding the ground I stand on.
Jeff Worley served as Kentucky Poet Laureate from 2019 through 2020. His poems have appeared in over 500 literary magazines and journals, and he has authored 6 book-length collections of poetry, including the Pulitzer Prize-nominated Happy Hour at the Two Keys Tavern, which was named co-winner in the Society of Midland Authors Literary Competition, and won the 2006 Kentucky Book of the Year in Poetry, an award given at the Southern Kentucky Book Festival. His latest book, the Poet Laureate of Aurora Avenue, Selected Poems, will be published by Broadstone Books later this year. In addition to his other honors, Jeff has received a National Endowment for the Arts Creative Writing Fellowship. Jeff.
Hello. Good to be here. Good to be here. It's just terrific to be surrounded by so many talented people. Why don't we all just stick around and order some pizza and beer? How does that sound? Any takers on that? When my wife Linda died last August, she left behind many wonderful things. One of those things is our cabin at Cave Run Lake, which is going on its 15th birthday coming up. One wonderful thing about being out there for a writer is you don't have to do much of anything. You just sit there and poems jump out of the woods at you. All you've got to do is have something to write with, pretty much. So I'll read this poem titled Porch Swing, Cave Run Lake, 2:30 a.m. This must be the quiet, the dead here. Though just yesterday I read that Weeping Pines Mortuary in Los Angeles will rig up a stereo system in their poshest lacquered coffin for a stiff price. The music is piped in via 2-way front speakers, 4 mid-bass drivers, divine tweeters, and a custom 8-inch subwoofer, which is what Mrs. Harriet Kosilov did for her husband, who all his life couldn't get enough of Mozart's Canzonetta Solaria, the lilting sway of soprano. Now it's on a continuous loop in Frederick's final resting place. I should be happy for him, his music to die for, the notes cascading around him like fat droplets from a magic waterfall. But instead, I think of his neighbor one plot over, a man named Patty Greer, the victim of a random drive-by. Turn it down, he says. Turn it down. God damn it, I'm trying to sleep. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for Kentucky Writers Day 2022. Thank you to Governor Beshear, Secretary Berry, our Kentucky Poet Laureate Crystal Wilkinson, and our former Poets Laureates, and to Lupita Diaz, our Kentucky Poetry Out Loud champion. Best of luck in the national finals. We'll be rooting for you. For those of you in the rotunda, we ask that you please move up to the mezzanine for some light refreshments while we get some photos with our poets. And on behalf of the Kentucky Arts Council and the Kentucky Arts Council Board and the Tourism Arts and Heritage Cabinet, we thank you for joining us today, and we will meet you in the mezzanine in a few minutes after some pictures. Thank you.